Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mom Project's Masterclass, How to See Motherhood as a Superpower with Alyssa Strauss. Alyssa, we are so excited to have you here today and talk about the all-important work of caregiving. Alyssa's book, When You Care, The Unexpected Magic of Caring for Others, came out on April 24. Happy one-year anniversary, by the way. And the book asks the question, what if we started to care about care? Alyssa looks at the societal obsession with going it alone and poses a challenge to let ourselves be transformed by the act of caregiving. When You Care weaves historical anecdotes and science with conversations with parents and caregivers to the young, the old, the ill, the disabled, and more, revealing a rich array of insights about how care shapes us on the inside and on the outside for the better. Alyssa has been writing about politics and the culture of parenting and caregiving for more than 15 years, with work appearing in publications like The Atlantic, The New York Times, Glamour, Elle, TheWeek.com, and elsewhere. She was also a former contributing writer to CNN.com and Slate, and she lives in Oakland, California, with her husband and two sons. Before we start, just a few housekeeping things. This session is recorded and will be saved here on LinkedIn and on our YouTube channel. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, so drop any questions that you may have into the comments. Okay, let's dive in. I know I gave an intro and we'll talk about your career journey, but before we kind of dive into this conversation, I'd love to get started with a quick round of getting to know you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Can you tell us about some of your summer plans or, some things that you're focusing on this summer?
I am focusing on sleepaway camp for both kids for the first time. I'm focusing on it a lot. I'm right now looking at the couch that I always dream of, like waking up on a Sunday and just sitting on for an hour with a book and a cup of tea, but never managed to do. And I was like, couch, I will be seeing you
very soon
for a week in July. Yeah.
The dream. Oh, and I bet, and they're going to have so much fun too.
Totally. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
so
good.
I am very excited for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
love them. We'll love a break from them. Yeah.
Exactly. And now when I went to sleepaway camp, now I'm like, I get it now. I get it. What is the best book that you've read recently?
There's a book of essays called Mothers and Other Fictional Characters by Nicole Grave Lipson. And it's kind of a slender volume. It's a book of essays. It's kind of easy to take in little doses. And it just so brilliantly cuts through the BS binary of motherhood as hellscape or motherhood as like, a sweet little picnic that's on a sunny day, and it actually gets into that rich, messy middle that I feel like there's some stuff, there's some books that do this, but not enough. And she does it just brilliantly. And she's so human. To me, the book is like, when you're staying at a B&B and they have a bookshelf and you kind of dream that you would like find one on the shelf that spoke to you like a friend. And it's like one of those books. Like I wish almost I'd happened upon it and didn't know her, but I recommend it even if you don't happen upon it. Yeah.
Okay. And then say the name one more time.
Sure. It's Mothers and Other Fictional Characters.
Okay.
By Nicole Grave Lipson.
Mothers and Other Fictional Characters.
Yes.
If you've read it, let us know. I see some people chiming in the comments, but let us know where you're joining from. And we're so excited you're here. Okay. And then last kind of icebreaker, what is your best productivity hack?
All right. This one's brand new. I think I've done it 4 times maybe, but my 12-year-old is not like a sports kid at all, but he does, we know he wants to like work out sometimes, and he enjoys doing little HIIT workouts with me. So I started saving exercising for after the kids come home, and Augie and I head to the basement and do like a 30-minute HIIT workout together. And I feel like I'm winning all around. And, you have to wait till the kids are a bit older for this one, but it's very exciting that I don't have to try to cram in the exercise during the day. And I could count on doing this maybe once or twice a week.
And you can do it together.
Yes. And it's fun because we both like fall sometimes and laugh, or we like can't, we can't plank anymore. And it becomes, and we laugh and we collapse on the mat.
Yeah. Like learning about each other in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Is amazing. And having those memories, that's going to be, I love that. I'm waiting. I'm patiently waiting until the day that my daughter says, "Can we work out?" Right now, she'll ask me to put on like a Peloton yoga class and then walk away. So that's where we're at. Okay, well, let's dive in to about you and your career journey. I'd love to kind of hear about your background. And then as a follow-up, I would love to hear about what inspired you to write When You Care.
Yeah, they kind of fuse together.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So my background is I've been writing about women's issues, with a real tighter focus on motherhood for what is now a very long time. As these things happen, I will be 46 this year, so the road behind me is getting longer and longer. I started writing about these issues in about 2009. During the 2010s, there was a very robust online feminist writing culture. Actually some money out there to be a writer, unlike today, in terms of publishing pieces. So I was just one of these fast and furious writers. I would pitch editors in the morning and have the piece done by the evening. And I did that for a while. And, I can get into why I'm glad that part of my life's over, but also I appreciated just being immersed in this conversation about women's issues during a time when people were interested in it, even if we got a few things wrong. And now the book. So I write about a lot about why we don't support parents and caregivers in this country. And I wrote about the kind of cultural pressures that moms have to resist. And I also wrote about like the lack of paid leave and universal, affordable, and reliable childcare, good maternity care, and sadly, the list goes on and on, right? So I got to a point with that writing where I felt like I could not write one more story asking why we don't have paid leave. It's just a bananas thing. Only industrialized nation in the world without a paid leave policy. It's not like this like extra special thing. It's just like a basic human necessity, and yet we don't have it. And there's actually like a moment when I read a quote in the New York Times from someone I'd interviewed a couple of years before at Slate saying just the exact same thing that she had told me. She needs to keep saying it. People need to keep writing about it. But for me, it was just this moment where I was like, you know what? This isn't just a policy issue. This is a culture issue. I want to dig into the cultural roots of how and why parenting and caregiving is just so invisible through and through in our laws and our policies and in our broader culture. And at the same time, so 2012 is when I had Augie, my exercise buddy now. And at the time where I was in Brooklyn, I now live in Oakland. And at the time in Brooklyn, there was this feeling, maybe it wasn't as universal as it felt to me, but it was the vibe I was immersed in, that you really had to choose between being a mom and like a cool intellectual writer. And a lot of people read Rachel Cusk's A Life Work, which I really appreciate in many ways. I don't hate the book, but I did walk away from it feeling like myself, and as like Alyssa, who's like, right, the interesting, smart Alyssa, and my mother self, the parent to Augie, were two distinct entities and only one could prevail. That I couldn't be Alyssa and be a mom without the mother part, like kind of like leaking into the like smart, interesting Alyssa and kind of ruining her. And I wrote a lot from that perspective. I was genuinely concerned about motherhood taking over my identity. And it wasn't all for naught. I think when it came time to making decisions about, like, I struggled a lot to breastfeed, to like accepting formula. I think the fact that I had been aware of how much pressure there is on moms to be a certain type of mother was really helpful for me. But at the same time, this person who had been writing about why the world doesn't value care, had this total blind spot to how intellectually, philosophically, creatively challenging and enriching parenting a child could be. And it took me a few years to get there, but I did realize at some point, like, I'm mad at the world for not valuing care. I'm mad at our country because we don't have paid leave and everything else. But also, like, I myself did not really show up to being a mom with the level of curiosity that I think all parents and caregivers deserve. So, and we need that curiosity if we're going to really value care as a culture and get those policies we need in the workplace and from our government in place.
I love that. And I think it is, so many of us kind of struggle with the identity of being a mom and being in the workforce, and what does that look like, and how can we untangle that, and what will that do to us? And I think one thing that really spoke to me was kind of earlier on in the book when you talked about the definition of ambition and how we quantify that in our modern world with paid work. Um, and and I think you say, like, I totally discounted that I managed to make a career out of writing. I have great relationships with my parents, my in-laws, my siblings and friends. I cook for my family 5 days a week, or that I'm raising kids who are kind and curious. Like, I think I read this at a point where I was like, what did I do today? And was feeling a little down on myself. And I think this spoke to, we do so much that we don't give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from you about what was the process of kind of untangling our current definition of ambition with motherhood and work, and how all of these things weave together.
Yeah. And I think just to, add a layer on this, I had Augie in 2012. That was the year of Lean In, right? That was the year of corner suite feminism, the year of corner suite feminism. So that's kind of what I was measuring myself against. And I knew I never wanted that. That's never been me. So it wasn't like I felt like I failed because I wasn't, rising up in a corporate structure. But at the same time, it was the water we all swam in, right? And it was really hard. And again, I'm a real yes and with all this stuff. Yes, we want more women to get those C-suites. Like, women have so much less money, collectively speaking, than men. When you see those numbers, you're like, oh, and then men become the philanthropists, and then men support their agenda, and so on and so on. So yes, I'm not against women wanting to get those great jobs, fighting their way to the top, being in charge. Mm-hmm. Love it. And right, it's a really messed up male definition of success and ambition when we limit it strictly to the workplace, right? When we limit it strictly to what our LinkedIn page looks like, what our resume looks like, what our bank account looks like, what we're taking home, are we working full-time versus part-time, et cetera. That's a set of values and definition of a good life that we inherited from men. And feminists need to still do way more to challenge that and get men on our side, right? It's not just about us kind of returning home, so to speak. I want everyone to return home a little bit, both practically and in their minds. So for me personally, it takes a lot, especially I found it hard to see this in the early days of parenting, in which, I like the word maintainer, right? Like that constant maintenance just takes over your whole life. Babies are so friggin' demanding. Just to like get through a day of feeding a baby and making sure they don't have poo in their butt and they're just kind of sleeping is like a Herculean task. But with a little distance over time, I realized how much work went into that maintenance and how kind of active your mind has to be to do it well. Just to get through a basic day of parenting and domestic work is really an enormous task. Mm-hmm. And from the time management piece, from the like rushing to Trader Joe's because you remember you need this for that, you're not going to have this for dinner tomorrow night, or someone's supposed to bring something to school. All that invisible labor, all the ticker tape in our brains is like contributing so much to the functioning of our families and society. And to add on top of it, the emotional attunement that you need to just to maintain your family during a day. Like, what's this kid? What's their vibe? What mood do they come home from school in? Who has a big project that's due tomorrow that they should have started 4 days ago? Like all these little bits and pieces. Like the sniffles are kind of coming. Are you planning for working from home tomorrow? Like it's like the earth is always shaking and you're sitting there, and it just to keep normal life going is enormous. And it became bigger than wanting to give myself a pat on the back for it, which I do. And I want us all to all the time. It became saying like, this is not this kind of the side dish of society. This is the main course, right? This is literally when a family functions well, a whole society functions well. And when we really like see that in its fullest, I think it could really change our whole attitude of like what we're doing in a lifetime. Feel less frustrated. We've all been there, right? You feel like I got nothing, you said, Elizabeth, I got nothing done today, but like you actually got so much done today. You just live in a culture that doesn't see it. And I think we have to start with seeing it ourselves and seeing it with each other, and then brick by brick building a culture in which we all see it.
Sorry, I'm like just thinking there's so much to think about there. And I 100% agree. And it's that reframing and also understanding that two things can be true at the same time. And I'm thinking particularly like being, lean into your job and also be a good mom. Like these two things can be true.
Totally.
We collectively and as individuals have to figure out how to kind of what that balance looks like literally day to day. And that's also part of maintaining. It's like, how am I maintaining home life versus work life versus we're always like spinning a million plates. So it's just figuring out the priorities of like, where should I spend my time in the current moment?
Right. And like how ambitious and how productive we are just for the spinning of the plates.
Just for
Like,
the spinning of the plates.
Wherever they land, and some days they're going to come crashing down. It's like, but just for like knowing that these plates are spinning and trying to keep them spinning, that's a big stuff, and it just to like take it back and like, I did so much today. I'm proud of myself. I feel good about myself. I did not fail.
I did not fail. And sometimes I think about this, and I might have spoken about this on another masterclass, but like I got to my computer at 9 and I was like, man, why am I like, I got to get my head in the game. But then I'm like, what have I done? I've gotten 2 kids off for school. I ran to Target to get a pickup. I had to go get something for dinner tonight. You know what I mean? I had reminded myself about teacher gifts. Like there's so many things that are buzzing around in our brain that then by the time we shift into work mode, we've already accomplished so much.
I mean, what a parent does before they show up for work every morning is really bananas.
I know. I think about it too. I'm like, whoa. But I think kind of connected to the same thought. I'd love to hear from you about some of the most important life skills that caregiving helps us develop, and how can we translate that into professional growth?
Yeah. So I think we've already kind of talked about it. I think we're all familiar with like top level skills, like just kind of like multitasking, right? Being able to keep the balls up in the air, being really efficient with time because you have no choice. Those are all really big, really important. I think beneath it is a whole other set of skills that we don't talk about enough because we don't pay enough attention to the deep philosophical, ethical formation that happens to us when we care for another. It doesn't happen automatically with all parents. It's something you have to, and speaking of productivity, right? You have to work for it. You have to try hard. What am I talking about specifically? I'm talking about attunement. I'm talking about being in the room with another person and doing that really difficult act, and this person being your children or perhaps your parent if you're caring for a parent, that really difficult act of predicting their needs, because we know we have to do that, right? We can't wait for them to express their needs. And at the same time, responding to their needs as they express them. Because when we're caring for someone, we always are doing both. We're driving the car, but they're kind of, an official backseat driver, so to speak, right? We need to be attuned to them. We need to receive their needs, who they are, and adapt in that moment. And that's some heavy stuff. And because, as I write in the chapter on philosophy in my book, people did not pay attention in the philosophy world to dependency care, like one human depending on another, and what it means to do that well, and how that actually can create visions of the good life until 1980. Okay, 1980. So most of us, if we took philosophy 101 in college, like no one spoke about care. In fact, if you did ever learn about care philosophy, please tell me, because your teacher deserves a medal. Because it's still a kind of under-recognized corner of philosophy, even in 2025. So we just did not see this as this like profound philosophical and ethical transformation. We ignored the like deep personal growth that can happen in it, and how profound that can be. And I'm saying can. Not everyone who is a parent or caregiver goes through this process. It takes some intention and showing up and trying to do it well. But when and if you do, it really takes you somewhere. Because when you're in a room of people it's not like, here's what I think, here's what you think. And kind of, and just kind of, like being set in those positions and then trying some clumsy way to put them together. It's actually a dance. It's actually like, you're going this way, I'm going that way. I'm trying to figure out like who you are, why you want that right now, what biases I might have that's tell me that's the wrong thing to want. And then go through the process of trying to think like, all right, should I honor this need? Should I honor my kid's need for a cookie tonight, even though we don't do dessert during this week because they had a hard day? Like all these little things that seem so small because we've made parenting so small are actually huge and translate to your connection and your ability to communicate effectively with everyone in every sphere of your life, including, most importantly, the workplace, which is ultimately about trying to find ways to work together. And so I think when we really shine the light on that dance of attunement, on that receiving the other, but also kind of trying to predict the other, we realize how much we grow through the process of care. And it's a tremendous, tremendous skill to bring to the workplace.
Well, and you talk about too how different your two sons were and how, Augie was like a really, really, really amazing baby and very like a kid that followed directions. And then Leo, right? Leo was the opposite.
Yeah.
Levi was the opposite. And so then you think about that too, and how you have to quickly go back and forth between the two, even just at home while you're, cooking dinner. And then think about those skills that we innately bring, but we don't really think about it.
We don't think about it. Yeah.
And how many personalities we deal with and how we navigate the workplace is exactly how we navigate. And I like what you said about, we make parenting feel small, but it's not small because these are like significant things that we do every single day to make sure these people feel cared for in different ways. In different ways we do them, we might do something different than we did yesterday.
Right. And as much as Instagram is filled with like very specific ideas on how to be a good parent, in fact, none of them are universally applicable because it's a relationship. These are two people at a particular moment in time. So A would be different if it was two other people in the room. And B, it would be different if it was tomorrow or yesterday, right? So it's that constant, I love the dance metaphor because you're constantly dancing, you're constantly moving. And so we feel that way practically with the grocery runs and, the birthday party gifts and whatnot, but also philosophically, ethically, psychologically, we're constantly dancing. And it's actually a great, beautiful skill because it helps you relate to others. And at this time in our society with loneliness crisis and isolation and divisiveness, like this is a skill we should be celebrating. We should be, screaming from the rooftops of like, I'm an active caregiver. Every day I work on how to connect with another person, see myself in that process. And I will bring that to this room,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Someone said in the comments, caring for dogs too. Yes, exactly. This is caring for all, caring for any.
I have a dog right now who this whole time is demanding me to pet her and is under the table right now. She's slapping my hands back and forth with her snoot. So well received. Yeah. And
I hope that you didn't hear my dog barking in the background. So it's just, yes, it's kind of caring for anything.
Yes.
And you touched on this, but I'd love to hear, some examples of how can caregivers talk about these skills in addition to attunement, how it relates to the benefit of an organization or a workplace.
Yeah. I want to start with what I want. So everyone to have in their heads, but perhaps not say out loud, and then get to the part where where what I suggest they might think or say out loud. So little history lesson. And in my book, I really take a deep dive into how care became so invisible. And for me, one of the first bits of research I did that actually like woke me up and said, wow, I'm really onto something here, was my dive into Charles Darwin. So most of us, if we have any familiarity with Charles Darwin, we think of survival of the fittest, that humans are competitive. That's what Darwin meant. And it's just our nature and there's nothing we can do about it. Sorry, we're just like gonna fight each other and whoever wins deserves their prize because they were the stronger one, and that's just science. And like record, screech, because that's not what Darwin thought at all. And in fact, it's also not at all how he lived his life. And I have a long part in my book about Charles Darwin. But to summarize it quickly here, Darwin, first of all, believed that sympathy and something we today we might call care was just as important as competition for the survival of the species. Like, it was not unclear to him at all. Cooperation, empathy, sympathy, care were essential to the survival of any collective, right? And particularly among primates and humans. So when someone says, oh, it's Darwinian, when they talk about competition, please correct them. So like, actually, no, Darwin would believe just as much of like that we need to be there for each other and connect as he did that we're all just like fight each other. And whoever wins is the best. Second, Darwin in his life was actually a very attentive father, which was not uncommon actually for wealthier Victorian men, which he was one. His kids would, when they were sick, they would come sleep in his couch on his study while he was working. He talks in his writings about the funny, silly little games he used to play with them. He would pretend he was a bear. They'd pretend they were in a circus together. So we get these kind of really sweet, intimate moments coming from his life. And part of his thinking on evolution came from his deep connection with one of his daughters who died at age 10. And Darwin grieved this daughter for years after, as understandably one would. But Darwin, like emotionally, from my understanding of it, like he felt he didn't struggle with, why am I grieving this girl? But from someone who's trying to understand evolution, he's like, how does this make sense, evolutionary speaking? What good does it do for the species to have me 40 years later still feeling so heartbroken over the loss of my daughter, Anne? And what he came to was actually that whole thing I was just talking about a minute ago, how sympathy, empathy, care, and cooperation are just as important as competition. What he came to is actually the parental instinct is where we get that from. And it's not something that's just wired in women. Darwin did not believe that. He wasn't a perfect feminist according to today's standards, but he did not think that only women have the capacity to care. But the parental instinct is that feeling we have of investment and care for the people we care for, our children, is actually the seed in humanity of all cooperation. Okay, so I want to take us back because when we come in with a total reframe of the human story in our heads, like it just creates confidence. It creates a sense of like, I'm not doing anything wrong because I'm invested in care. This is part of the human story. This is part of human survival. You're not going to say that on a job interview, but I really, my book's filled with examples like that of asking big questions on how care became so invisible. And I think they really help us create a starting point internally when we go and talk about our lives and who we are. I think specifically some of the skills that I think are really important to alight on is adaptability. I spoke about it a little before, but I didn't name it yet. Where everyone's terrified of AI. I honestly avoid reading about it a lot, so I'm not as terrified as other people, but I'm in the denial phase, clearly. But the thing about AI is that AI is based on the past. That's how it works, right? It's constantly being fed the now, and then tomorrow it'll respond based on yesterday. So we already spoke about that doesn't work with care, right? Care requires us to be constantly adaptable. Our children are constantly changing, minute to minute, hour to hour, not to mention year by year.
Yes.
And we need, when we are caregivers, we learn to roll with it, right? You have no choice. You really have no choice in life but to roll with it. But because we're this like control obsessed, productivity obsessed culture, many of us really don't learn that lesson of rolling with it, of just keep going until we have kids. It's many of us are our first kind of confrontation with the reality that so much is outside our control in this life. And we're lucky. We're a society, a society of general wealth and privilege. So if we've got that far in life, that's our first lesson. We're lucky. But when it comes and it hits you hard. Yes. And it's like, holy shit. And it upends everything. It's an entirely new way to think about yourself and life itself. But once we learn to adjust, it's not easy. It's hard. We learn to adjust and we really become more adaptable humans who are able to show up in the present and respond to the present. And I think that like to the degree that we can impress that, whether through direct language or indirect language, when we're at a job interview or when we're, just talking to our bosses to check in, or even presenting ourselves in any kind of professional capacity, I think it's a real strength to rely on. And it doesn't always have to be immediately tied to the fact that you're a mom, but just like, remember, you're adaptable. You know how to roll with it. You adapt to the moment that's today, not like AI, the moment that was yesterday. And these relational skills are really what AI, I believe, can never take away from us. And so I feel like we get, I'm looking at the phrase masterclass, like we get a masterclass in that every day as parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Adaptability is number one. And I think weaving it into conversations too allows you to, for both from a professional and personal point of view, allows you to kind of embrace the two. And I think we're getting a lot of questions about like, how can we translate these skills? And I know we'll talk about them kind of down the line when we have our Q&A, but it's just interesting about these skills are so ingrained in what we do all the time. So it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to being a caregiver, but just there are ways that we can tout them and let them be known.
Yeah.
And to follow that, we can also see that these traits are extremely important in leaders and managers, because we know that when managers lead with empathy, they're adaptable, that increases the organization ROI. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think I'll start with a little story from my book and then lead into leadership. So my first big philosophical epiphany, so to speak, as a parent was realizing just how friggin' certain I was. And this certainty came from my work. So I'd mentioned I was, a writer in the feminist blogosphere. I wrote oftentimes 4 to 5 pieces a week. Really just constant opinion generation. This was my job. This is how I made a living. My editor would ask me, to send 5 pitches in the morning with hot takes, right? We didn't call them that, but that's what they were, on a news event. Approve one, and by the afternoon, I would deliver it. Okay, so when I had a kid, that was how my brain worked. I just I could look at anything and come up with an opinion on it. And then I would have 5 arguments for that opinion. This is not a healthy way to live, full stop. I think we know this now as a society, or maybe some more than others. It's also really not a healthy way to parent, to always feel certain. And as I mentioned, Augie was a kid who didn't resist a lot. It was a whole leave I resisted. So, don't worry. I got that kid too. I had my tantrum kid. Augie rolled with it, and he rolled with it a little too much. And this actually proved to be practically a much easier kid than I expected, but existentially much more challenging, because I realized how easy it would be with a kid that just rolled with it to just constantly tell them what to do, what they should like, how to live their life, what's the right decision on this and that. And adding to this is what I did for a living is tell everyone what to think. Augie ended up being this mirror to who I was, unlike anything else. I saw myself through my relationship with Augie more clearly than I feel like I had ever seen myself before. And this certainty is the thing that I saw in the mirror that I did not like. And honestly, it made me in some ways a worse writer. People do well when they have very strong opinions and they take extreme positions. This is what sells online. In a way, I joke, Augie, in that sense, he did hurt my career. But I think it made me, in my taste, in fact, a better writer, just perhaps less, widely read, but also just a better human. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm going to bring that to leadership skills, because I think when we care for someone, we have to have some confidence. We are leaders, so to speak. They're dependent on us, but we can't be overly certain. That word is that, certain. So I think about, I run an artistic fellowship. I lead a local cohort here in the Bay Area, and I also co-lead a global network of cohorts in this artistic fellowship. And how I've translated that skill for me is, I really think of it as a leader, I am confident that I am the creator of a container. I create the container, I set the ground rules, so to speak, for how we are going to connect and how we're going to share information and ideas in a setting. but I don't impose my specific ideas on people. I don't start with, and this is what I think about how we should study this text, as we do text study in this fellowship, right? Or this is the kind of work that should be made about it. And it's a delicate balance. It always requires that active brain. This is a big reoccurring theme of this conversation, that active relational brain that care helps us develop. There's not one fixed way to do this that's going to work every single time, but it's always my intention. And I think it's a tricky balance, but it's one that can really bring out the best in people and allow them to shine while still holding a sense that like someone is in charge and there is a container here and it is well defined. And it's how I try to parent and it's how I try to lead, professionally speaking.
Well, and I love that the lessons that you've learned in motherhood that reflect back on yourself or even just reflect on your children can then take that into what it looks like to be a leader, because so often it's very similar. And I think allowing people and children the space to do what they do best and just kind of being that container for them is the best way to put it. And you're allowing people to grow in their own unique way without like dictating, this is how I do it, so this is how you need to do it.
Right. And I learned a lot from them in the process.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think they always say like hire people who you don't get along, or who you wouldn't who are exactly like yourself, because you need those differences in a room to help you cultivate and create new ideas and campaigns and whatnot.
Yeah.
In last year we released an industry report, and in it we found that 76% of companies say that their employees who are moms and or caregivers are high performers. Talk to us from your perspective about how the act of care amplifies literally everything else in your life.
Yeah. So everything else, work or?
Well, I think too, it's like care amplifies what we do both at work and at home, but how does that, like, how do the two work so well together?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like I can start now with more history real quick, because I think it's, it will help create a big picture to enter this answer with. So when a group of economists back in the 30s went to Africa to figure out how to create what is now known basically as the GDP, there was a woman with them. Her name was Phyllis Dean. She's a Scottish economist. And she said to the men on that trip, like, I think you're ignoring some of the productivity that's happening here, because she noticed that moms were walking a mile each way or more to get water and bringing it back to home. And she's like, how is that not part of what we're measuring as productivity? And kind of shockingly, actually, the economics world has had their eyes most open to care compared to compared to dependency care, right? Parenting and caregiving type of care, compared to philosophy or even psychology or even theology and spiritual traditions in a way. Like economists, even since the moment of creation for the GDP, have been asking like, care is missing here. And I bring this up because I think we're still living in this today, and it still kind of infects the way we view care. Two studies to point to. One is when women started working in the professional workforce en masse in the 70s, at first economists thought, oh, look, productivity is going up. But later economists who actually figured out a way to measure care and value it as productive said, actually, in some ways, productivity went down. The growth wasn't quite what we thought because we didn't measure and value care. Another quick study, I worked with an economist who works for the federal government, or at least did work for the federal government when I spoke to him for this book. And he works at a bureau that focuses on household labor. And he told me when they crunched numbers after the pandemic, they found that one of the big reasons we didn't go into a bigger recession than economists had predicted we would have gone into is because, drumroll please, moms, because of all the productivity in the home, all the stuff we did, all the stuff that made moms lose their mind and go to a field and literally scream, as the New York Times wrote about the primal scream, right? Helped save the economy. So, I want to get us into this head frame, like this state of mind, because I think that we have to realize that when we're raising our kids, when we're doing a good job at that, it's not just contributing to our children. It's actually woven in to the success and fabric of a whole society. When a workplace gives you the flexibility you need to manage both being an attentive parent and meeting your kids' needs as they come in, and we all know those needs can fluctuate, and do your job well, it's not just helping you, it's literally helping build a functional society and create citizens who in the future will be in, the data is overwhelmingly clear about this. When kids have reliable, attentive caregivers, they don't have to be attachment parents or gentle parents. I want to say, I don't mean that by attentive caregivers. It's you doing you version of attentive. They are more likely to hold jobs as adults. They're less likely to end up incarcerated. They're more likely to be in healthy, functional relationships, get married, have kids themselves, if that's what they choose. So we have to think of the broader investment. We so siloed family life as everyone's on their own that we just don't think of like the broader investment of investing in families is investing in society overall. It's investing in the future. It's investing in that company. If we're going to bring it back down to the company's likelihood that they will have good employees in 20 plus whatever years, right? Like this is, it's a societal effort. And I think that when we see the connection, when we make that really clear for ourselves and others, it's not asking for favors, right? Yeah. It's not asking for like some special treatment. It's asking for a reasonable collective investment in a collective future.
And in turn, they, even the businesses or, you know, your family or the organizations that you volunteer with will get a more, like a happier, more productive, more loyal person within that system. So it's like they're also interconnected. When family thrives, society thrives, businesses thrive. And, you know, we have data to prove that when companies invest in these structural policies that support parents at every phase of their career journey, whether you have toddlers, whether you're, you know, going through fertility treatment, or whether you have high schoolers or you're caring for aging parents, like in that sandwich generation, if you have the benefits that kind of allow people to live their full lives, you will have a more productive, loyal employee and a happier employee. And retention will, you know, you'll have retention. So I think there's so many benefits to the collective acknowledgement of care and how it impacts the bottom line, but the bottom line from like everywhere, whether it's work, family, society.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's like your business's bottom line,
yes,
it's individual family's bottom line, and society's bottom line.
Yeah, and by paying attention to this, it allows us to shine a spotlight on the work that we're doing at home, encompasses all of the things that we do. And there was a Gallup study from December 2024 that I read recently about like how when companies invest, that they know that people are doing more than, you know, they allow for the flexibility in that day-to-day for you to be the parent and the ideal worker, you will benefit from that because you have the autonomy to do what you need to do to get the job done. And it circles back to what we talked about earlier, is like maintaining. We're just all we're trying to do is maintain.
Yeah. And great things come from that maintaining, right? It's like, it sounds like a small word because we didn't launch a new business, right? It's not like what we consider productive in our culture because it's not necessarily clearly outcome oriented, but big picture, it's very outcome oriented.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I love, you also said that like, care is an essential piece of the economic puzzle, and it's our own form of productivity, one through which we invest our time in the well-being of our society and its members. And, you know, those caretakers are the ones who turn, this was I thought it was so tangible and such a beautiful, well-written line, but the ones who turn sticky-fingered toddlers into voting, law-abiding citizens and ensure dignity for all during our weaker moments. Like it's all so circular. And I'm sure it's evolved and it's gotten better over time, but there's still so much work to be done.
So much work to be done. Still seen as selfish. The way we talk about parents, we don't have very nice things like helicopter intensive, It's like we have so many bad lenses through which to look through when thinking about how we care for our kids, and so few positive ones. I would like one positive one that didn't paint me as a weird, obsessed mom who was selfish and just cared about her kids, or like, like I feel like these labels alienate me from myself. And it's like, imagine just like awesome mom, or how few moms I know will even say, I feel like I'm a good mom. That makes me really sad. It's like, but
I know.
who, who's giving them that kind of framing and language to allow them to say that? No one. I mean, I feel like in many ways, my book is a 300-page love letter to parents and caregivers to help you realize how much you're doing without doing all that crazy extra stuff that some folks on Instagram might make you feel like you have to do. Like, just that maintaining is huge. And it's like, there's one thing, I want people to feel after reading my book is like, oh, wow, I'm awesome. I'm like doing amazing things. I'm super smart and
You're
productive.
awesome and super smart, and everyone is doing amazing things.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to know that. This is a perfect conversation as we head into May, month of Mother's Day, Mental Health Awareness Month, but we can kind of think about how what we do impacts our mental health. But okay, so I see some questions coming in. Are you okay to bounce over to
Yeah.
Q&A? Okay.
Sure.
So Julie asks, how can we frame our parenting and caregiving experience as not just emotionally valuable, but as a powerful asset we bring to the workplace?
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Again, I'm really going to hit on the adaptability piece, because I think in the age of the fear of AI and general instability, I mean, all I hear about these days, so we already talked about AI. Let's just get to the fact that things feel very unstable right now. And for everyone,
Yes.
in all senses, right? From an economic perspective, politically, it feels like a moment of a lot of movement and action, right? Kind of wherever you are politically, this feels like a moment of profound instability. So not just as a response to AI's less than capabilities to be adaptable, and the fact that like the human relational empathetic brain brings a lot when it comes to that, but also we're in a moment where we don't really know what tomorrow is going to look like. And if we can take that and say, like, that's part of what I know how to do. I know how to wake up to a new scenario every day and find my way through it. Sometimes we're beyond exhausted at the end of those days. Trust me, I'm not saying it's a Herculean effort. It's climbing Mount Everest sometimes, but it is a huge, huge skill we get. And that, I think this is a time where it's going to come into play more than, at least honestly, this in my professional life, I think.
And I think understanding your transferable skills and how they will like go blend into any workplace environment, whether you're empathetic so you can lead a team, you're adaptable so you understand when things change, you can think quickly on your feet. I mean, there are also ways to reframe these terms into more professional terms that allow you to then speak to these skills, and talk to what they'll do for the organization and kind of connect those to the job description. I'm getting really granular here, but like think about some of these transferable skills that you use and then look at that job description and bring those to the table, or saying I was really adaptable when I did X, Y, and Z, or in my volunteering work with this career break, I did X, Y, and Z. So just remember to kind of bring those out in conversations, because I think that will also really help without feeling like talking about being a caregiver is like taking a backseat to what you really want to do.
Yeah. And I think talking about, when you get moments of failure, I think that's, we all get, that muscle gets exercised a lot, right? As parents, that things just don't go as you had hoped they would go. And how do you respond? What do you do the next day? And it's going to happen in a workplace. So talking about how you've responded to when things didn't go as planned, and how you adapted to that moment and found a way through, is a skill that we all need a lot of right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another question that's kind of on those same lines. Janelle says the challenge is finding employers that allow for this flexibility. How can moms and caretakers look for this in a new employer without looking like we are lazy or seeking this unspoken selfishness? And I think too, I'll just jump in here. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just processing for a minute, but go.
Because it's also like acknowledging, yes, I took a career pause, but in that career pause, I did X, Y, and Z. And then also realizing that you're not asking for flexibility. You're coming in with a new approach to saying, I will do so much more in less time because I am productive, because I am a mom, because I am adaptable, because I am empathetic, because I can do all of these different things, but I know the value of time and I can do them all for you pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this is why I, mentioned these stories about Charles Darwin and the creation of the GDP, because I think we need to undo our internal biases against ourselves as parents and caregivers. And you're not going to give the person interviewing you a lecture about the creation of the GDP and how there was this, Scottish economist there. Nope, that's not going to come up. But we need such a reframe, and it has to come from the roots up. And, again, that's what I try to do with this book, because once I saw it everywhere in all of our meaning making systems, all of our understandings of what it means to be a productive person and live a good life. We're care blind. So it's like, how do we get rid of that? And so you're not lazy. You're not selfish. Everyone on this call or this, live stream knows it. And I think so focusing on what you do and not what you don't do, I think is really key, and starting with that frame.
I think so too. And I think, and Jennifer also asked something similar, is like, any advice on going back into corporate work after being out for a while, raising kids? And I will start with saying, Jennifer, we have also a lot of masterclasses that talk about how to reframe your career break into something that talks about what you did during that break that amplifies you as an employee that would be great in this workforce. So after this conversation, I'll go in and send you some links, because I think those will be really helpful in talking about it like super strategically. But there are ways, and know that your career break only added to your wealth of experience that then you bring to the workforce.
Yeah. And I think also, just when you think of personal relationships, like, you have skills now, better skills to build personal relationships, and you can start building the culture change at the workplace that you need to happen through those personal relationships. So you connect with another parent. More and more dads, honestly, surprising fun fact about my book, I've gotten more fan mail from men than women, because I really include dads in the story here as parents and caregivers, while also acknowledging, the gap between how much moms and dads tend to do. And so it may not just be moms too, maybe other dads. And also, who are the most silent of all are caregivers to old, ill, and disabled individuals. So I'd say, take those amazing relational skills, those ability to be in a room with someone and try to connect with them. And with time, I think you're going to find allies and other people who see you for what you do as a parent and caregiver, because you see them for what they do as a parent and caregiver.
Absolutely. And another thing that I just thought of is connect with your fellow caregivers, because you never know what networking can do for you in this career journey. It's never linear. So know that too. I think sometimes we see on LinkedIn and we see on social media that things are just always like, people are flying through the sky going on a rocket ship and just really, but no, it's not. It is a long winding road and a jungle gym. So your career pause is part of that. So just know that and understand that and own that. I hate that we're just about at time, but I just wanted to say, Alyssa, any like final words before we depart?
Oh, yeah, I think the other big thing that I really want more of in the world, and just want to encourage everyone to have, is curiosity about themselves as parents and caregivers, and others as parents and caregivers. Say, we go to a dinner party, on one side, there's a new mom, who has a 3-month-old at home. And on the other side of the table, there's some guy that just hiked Mount Everest. Everyone's going to be asking Mr. Mount Everest for like, what was it like? And accepting it was hard, but this like meaningful, rich, important thing. And oftentimes no one really wants to hear from the new mom because it's boring, right? And I think it's like, the more we can put that curiosity lens on our experiences and others' experiences of parents and caregivers, the more we can have that ripple change effect that we need, where a lot of the questions today got into, implicitly how you have to kind of tiptoe around these issues. You can't talk to them head on. My dream is to build a world where the tiptoeing is a thing of the past, and it's only going to get there through curiosity. And it's every conversation matters, including conversations with yourself.
I love that. And I think I read on your Substack, which I will also link to because Alyssa's Substack is amazing. And she obviously writes about care, but there's so many different nuances and it's amazing. But you were interviewing two moms of disabled children and they're like, just ask us how we're doing. And I think that's what it is like leading with curiosity, because so often we feel like we're intruding, but I think so many of us just want to talk about what's happening. And so leading with curiosity is such a beautiful way to end this conversation and to know that, be curious about what you're doing and what others are doing.
Thank you.
And Alyssa, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Substack. Substack's my favorite social media place to hang out. So if you're a Substacker, come on in and you can subscribe to my newsletter. And I'm also always happy to receive emails and talk about care. It's my favorite subject in the whole world. So appreciate any communications.
And a reminder that you can buy When You Care at your favorite bookstore anywhere, but it's also out on paperback, right?
Yeah, it's out in paperback now. So it's a lighter, easier, work tote friendly copy is available. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope you took away some valuable information for your career journey, your personal journey, and beyond. There are so many other resources we have in our library for our masterclasses about navigating your career journey. So I would encourage you to go look on YouTube. And thank you all for joining us today and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.